Peppy, will you come to Ithaca with me as my wife?
I felt he kind of coasted through Die Hard too.
Shut up!
Disney has buried more animated projects than most studios have ever greenlit. We are talking fully written scripts, completed storyboards, voice recordings in the can, millions of dollars spent, and then nothing. Entire worlds erased from the production slate like they never existed. And here's the thing, what you are about to see is not a list of vague concepts that barely made it past a napkin sketch. These are fully developed animated productions, some with years of work behind them, that Disney deliberately chose to lock in a vault and never speak of again. From a World War II cartoon featuring Roger Rabbit fighting actual Nazis, to a Roald Dahl adaptation that collapsed under a copyright war nobody saw coming, to a sequel so controversial that Disney pretended the entire thing never happened. These are 15 incredible Disney cartoons that never got made, and once you hear the real reasons why, you will never look at the House of Mouse the same way again. Number 15. Homer's Odyssey, early 1990s.
Captain Odysseus, our drinking water was lost in the fight against the vortex, so we must...
In the summer of 1992, Jeffrey Katzenberg stood in front of the press and announced that Disney was developing an animated adaptation of Homer's The Odyssey. Let that sink in for a moment. The same studio that made Talking Mice and Singing Crabs wanted to tackle one of the most complex, violent, and philosophically dense works in all of Western literature. And the craziest part is they were completely serious about it. Katzenberg, who was then chairman of Walt Disney Studios, had just overseen the release of Aladdin, a film that would go on to become the highest-earning movie of that entire year. Disney's animation division was printing money, and Katzenberg wanted to spend that capital on something nobody expected. The Odyssey was announced alongside other ambitious projects like Sinbad the Sailor. This was an era where Disney believed it could animate anything and audiences would show up. But internally, The Odyssey presented a problem that no amount of budget could solve. The story was too long, the tone was too serious, and most critically, it refused to translate into the kind of comedy-driven format that had made the Disney Renaissance so dominant. Executives wanted humor, heart, and marketable sidekicks. What they got from early development on The Odyssey was war, betrayal, divine wrath, and a protagonist who spends 10 years watching his men die on the way home. When Katzenberg departed Disney in 1994, after being passed over for the president position following Frank Wells' death in a helicopter crash, The Odyssey lost its most powerful internal champion. Katzenberg took several of his pet projects with him when he co-founded DreamWorks with Steven Spielberg and David Geffen, but The Odyssey stayed behind at Disney, orphaned and unwanted. The studio eventually pivoted to a lighter take on Greek mythology with Hercules in 1997. Number 14. Musicana, 1980. Walt Disney once envisioned Fantasia as a living film, one that would be updated every year with new animated segments set to new pieces of music, evolving endlessly in theaters across the world. That vision died in 1940 when the original Fantasia, made on a budget of $2.28 million, became a catastrophic box office failure. In fact, Disney was nearly $3 million in debt, and its stock had plummeted from $25 per share to just $4 at the time. Walt himself later admitted regret, telling a journalist in 1955 that he had tried to be a smarty pants and paid the price. So it was genuinely surprising when 40 years later, two Disney animation legends attempted to resurrect that dream. In 1980, Wolfgang Reitherman and veteran animator Mel Shaw began preliminary work on a project called Musicana. It was described in a 1980 Los Angeles Times article as an ambitious concept mixing jazz, classical music, myths, and modern art. The planned segments were extraordinary. One featured a mythological battle between an ice god and a sun goddess set to Sibelius's Finlandia. Another depicted frogs performing in a Louisiana bayou set to the music of jazz legends Louis Armstrong and Ella Fitzgerald. But this was the early 1980s, and Disney's animation department was in turmoil. The studio was hemorrhaging talent, struggling to define its creative identity, and about to undergo a complete executive overhaul. The new regime was focused on the long-term survival of the animation division, not on reviving a 40-year-old dream that had nearly destroyed the company the first time around. So, Musicana was canceled in favor of the cheaper and more commercially viable Mickey's Christmas Carol. The project was so thoroughly abandoned that Disney published detailed information about its planned segments in a 1995 book literally titled The Disney That Never Was. Number 13. My Peoples, 2003.
I can't take you anywhere. That That was real nice. Wonder what's playing next week.
5 months after co-directing Mulan, Barry Cook sat down and began writing a short story called The Ghost and the Gift. It was a small, personal tale about 3 children and a ghost helping an Appalachian couple fall in love. Cook believed it could become something Disney had never attempted before. So, when Cook pitched the idea to Disney CEO Michael Eisner and animation chief Thomas Schumacher, both men agreed the concept showed potential but had reservations. Eisner thought the story needed more conflict. Schumacher said the cast was too human and felt the project belonged in live action, not animation. So Cook went back to his research on Appalachian culture and remembered something that changed everything. The people of Appalachia had a tradition of building dolls out of household objects: flower scoops, scrub brushes, old garden gloves, clothespins, things most people would throw away. Cook redesigned the entire film around 7 of these folk art characters and pitched the revised concept by shipping a handmade maquette of a character named Angel. The executives opened the case, saw Angel sitting on the conference table, and greenlit the project. Behind the scenes, Cook proposed delivering the film for $45 million using a groundbreaking hybrid approach: 70% computer animation for the doll characters and 30% traditional hand-drawn animation for the humans. But the project went through 5 different title changes and 3 executive regime shifts. When David Stainton replaced Schumacher as head of animation in early 2003, he was unimpressed. On November 14, 2003, Stainton flew to the Florida studio and announced that My Peoples was canceled in favor of Chicken Little. He then announced that the Florida animation studio itself would be shutting down entirely. Number 12, King of the Elves, 2008. Philip K. Dick is arguably the most important science fiction writer in Hollywood history. His stories inspired Blade Runner, Total Recall, Minority Report, and The Man in the High Castle, generating well over $1 billion at the worldwide box office combined. But buried deep in his bibliography, between the dystopian nightmares and the reality-bending thrillers, sits a strange little fantasy tale that almost nobody talks about. It is called The King of the Elves, a short story first published in 1953, and Disney wanted to turn it into a major animated feature. And here's the thing. In April 2008, Walt Disney Animation Studios officially announced the project, set for a 2012 release under the direction of Aaron Blaise and Robert Walker, with John Lasseter himself producing. Early concept art and CG character tests showed a level of texture and detail more akin to something like Avatar than a typical stylized Pixar picture. But by December 2009, the project was permanently shelved. When visitors toured Disney's animation offices in Burbank, beautiful elves artwork still dotted the walls, but inside the building the mood had shifted. Nobody could confirm exactly why production collapsed so abruptly. In 2010, the project was revived under Bolt co-director Chris Williams and was reportedly progressing so well that it rivaled Frozen for a 2013 release slot. Then, roughly a year in, Williams decided this was not the film he wanted to make and walked away. Story problems had plagued every iteration. The project quietly disappeared for good. Number 11, Mistress Masham's Repose, 1980s. T.H. White wrote 2 of the most beloved fantasy novels of the 20th century. The first, The Once and Future King, became the foundation for Disney's 1963 animated classic, The Sword in the Stone. The second was a book called Mistress Masham's Repose, a 1946 novel about a 10-year-old orphan girl named Maria who discovers a colony of Lilliputians. Fantasy author Terry Pratchett called it one for the Hall of Fame, and in the mid-1980s, Disney wanted to animate it. Behind the scenes, Andreas Deja was brought in to create preliminary character designs. Deja later shared some of his sketches publicly, calling them detailed and full-of-life storyboards that genuinely brought White's eccentric world to the screen. And here's the thing. When the project was pitched to Roy E. Disney and newly installed CEO Michael Eisner, Roy thought it was charming. On the other hand, Eisner outright said he hated it. But the real executioner was Jeffrey Katzenberg, the new chairman of Walt Disney Studios. Katzenberg disliked the project from the start and repeatedly blocked it from moving forward. While Roy Disney kept renewing the film rights to the novel, Katzenberg kept shutting the production down. Eventually, the director, Hale, and most of the creative team were fired. The animators who had been working on Mistress Masham's Repose were reassigned to an idea that Eisner himself had proposed, an animated version of The Catcher in the Rye, but with German shepherds as the main characters instead of humans. Number 10, Where the Wild Things Are, 1983. Maurice Sendak's Where the Wild Things Are is one of the most important children's books ever published. Written in 1963, it won the Caldecott Medal in 1964, sold over 19 million copies worldwide, was translated into more than 40 languages, and was so culturally embedded in American life that President Barack Obama chose to read it aloud to children at every single White House Easter egg roll during his presidency. On paper, an animated version would be a guaranteed hit. In reality, it was completely different. The entire story is told in fewer than 350 words, and in 1983, a young Disney animator named John Lasseter believed he could turn those 350 words into a full-length animated feature that would change the future of cinema. Lasseter had been working at Disney alongside fellow animator Glenn Keane when they saw early footage of Tron, which was then in post-production. Together, they devised a concept that had never been attempted before: hand-drawn characters moving through fully computer-generated three-dimensional environments. But here's the thing. Though Disney executives were impressed by the technical demonstration, they were not impressed enough to fund a feature. The project was deemed too expensive, and the challenge of expanding a 40-page picture book into a full-length narrative was considered too risky. Lasseter, undeterred, then used the Wild Things test as evidence to pitch The Brave Little Toaster as a feature film using the same hybrid technique. When asked how much money the studio would save with this new technology, Lasseter candidly replied somewhere in the neighborhood of $0. Minutes after the pitch meeting, animation administrator Ed Hansen called Lasseter into his office and told him his employment at Disney was terminated. Lasseter was kept on temporarily to finish the Wild Things test footage, which later aired on the Disney Channel in January 1984, and then he was gone. Number 9. Wildlife, 2000. Picture this. It is the late 1990s, and Disney is quietly developing an animated film about a talking elephant who becomes a pop star on the 1970s New York City nightclub circuit. That is not a joke. That was a real project with a real budget, real voice actors, and a real team of veteran animators working out of a division called The Secret Lab. The film was called Wildlife, and it was loosely based on George Bernard Shaw's classic play Pygmalion, the same source material behind My Fair Lady. Except in this version, Eliza Doolittle was an elephant named Ella. Behind the scenes, Alan Cumming was cast to voice Red, Kathy Bates was attached to voice Magda, and Deborah Messing was reportedly being considered for Kitty Glitter. The production team included Disney legend Floyd Norman and a roster of experienced animators, and the studio spent an estimated $20 million on the project before it was shut down. But it was the content, not the cost, that killed Wildlife. The film was never intended to be a typical Disney release. Its directors, Howard Baker and Roger Gould, were hoping it could be distributed under the Touchstone Pictures label, or even through Miramax because of its adult-skewing humor. In the fall of 2000, Roy Disney sat through a work-in-progress screening and was appalled by the film's tone. One joke in particular, involving a gay character making an innuendo about going down a manhole while entering the New York sewer system, reportedly set Roy off so badly that he immediately ordered all production halted. The Secret Lab, the division that had been animating the film, was banned and shut down entirely. Number 8. Newt, 2008. In the history of Pixar Animation Studios, only one film has ever been publicly announced and then officially canceled. Its name was Newt, and its death gave birth to one of the most successful animated films ever made. The project was unveiled during a Disney presentation in 2008 and was set to be Pixar's 14th feature film. And here's the thing. Newt was meant to be the directorial debut of Gary Rydstrom, but somewhere in pre-production, the story stopped working. Pixar's leadership, including President Ed Catmull, later admitted plainly that the idea simply was not coming together no matter how many passes the team took at it. Rather than force a release date, the studio quietly removed Newt from its public lineup in 2010, sparking years of fan speculation since Pixar almost never killed an announced project outright. The film's biggest twist came later. In 2012, Blue Sky Studios announced Rio, an animated film about two of the last blue macaws being brought together to save their species, and suddenly Newt's premise no longer felt original. Pixar pulled Rydstrom off the project and brought in Pete Docter to restart development. But Docter had a different idea entirely. He pitched a concept about personified emotions living inside a young girl's mind, and Pixar's leadership agreed it was better. That pitch became Inside Out, which grossed $857 million worldwide on a $175 million budget and won the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature. Number 7. Frady Cat, 2000s. John Musker and Ron Clements are arguably the most important directing duo in Disney animation history. Their films have collectively grossed billions of dollars and defined the sound, the look, and the emotional DNA of the Disney Renaissance. So when they pitched a new project in 2004, you would think the studio would have written a blank check. They did not. The film was called Frady Cat, and it was described as an animated Hitchcockian thriller set in London. During productions, Harold Sieperman and Hans Bacher were hired for visual development. The initial story reel was presented in May 2004, and the studio's own animators loved it, but David Stainton, then president of Walt Disney Feature Animation, refused to greenlight the project. His reasoning was brutal. He believed the film was too obscure because modern audiences, especially children, would not know who Alfred Hitchcock was. According to industry journalist Jim Hill, the executives argued, "Who today even remembers who Alfred Hitchcock was? So why would kids in 2009 pay good money to see an animated film that pays tribute to an old, fat, dead movie director?" Musker and Clements left Disney after the rejection. They eventually returned to direct The Princess and the Frog and later Moana, which grossed over $690 million worldwide. Number 6. The Gremlins, 1943. Roald Dahl was a fighter pilot in the Royal Air Force during World War II. In 1940, he crashed his Gloucester Gladiator biplane in the Libyan desert, suffering injuries so severe that he could never fly combat missions again. Reassigned as a military attaché at the British Embassy in Washington, D.C., the 26-year-old Dahl began writing a tale inspired by RAF folklore, a story about tiny, mischievous creatures called gremlins who were blamed whenever a British aircraft suffered unexplained mechanical failures during the war. Dahl sent his manuscript to the Air Ministry for approval, and it eventually reached Walt Disney himself. Walt loved it and invited Dahl to the Burbank studio. On set, the studio developed extensive concept art and began pre-production on a feature that was planned as a live-action and animation hybrid, with the gremlins hand-drawn and the human pilots performed by real actors. But the project was cursed from the start. Disney's legal team discovered that the characters could not be copyrighted because gremlins were part of established RAF folklore, and no individual could claim credit for creating them. The British Air Ministry, which held influence over Dahl's wartime activities, demanded final approval over the script, and by December 1943, Walt wrote directly to Dahl to deliver the fatal blow. The Gremlins will not be made as a feature because of the feeling on the distributor's part that the public has become tired of so many war films. Dahl accepted his fate and went on to become one of the best-selling authors of all time. Number 5. Mort, 2010. In the 1990s, Pratchett was the best-selling author in all of Britain, and at the turn of the century, the only writer outselling him in the UK was J.K. Rowling. And yet, despite all of that, no major Hollywood studio has ever successfully brought his book, Discworld, to the big screen. But then, around 2010, Walt Disney Animation Studios came calling. And this time, the team they assembled was extraordinary. John Musker and Ron Clements, Little Mermaid, Aladdin, and The Princess and the Frog were attached to direct. They were so committed to the project that they traveled to the 2010 Discworld convention in Birmingham, England, to meet Pratchett personally and immerse themselves in his world. Behind the scenes, concept art was developed by Disney animator Claire Keane, and it was beautiful. Her black and white renderings of Death and the Princess Kelly captured Pratchett's tone perfectly, balancing the macabre with genuine warmth and dark humor. An art department was established. A Christmas card was produced featuring Death dressed as Father Christmas. It was going further than anyone expected, but then it collapsed. The Discworld rights were sold as a package, and Disney was unwilling to option the entire franchise just to make one film. On top of that, Disney was moving away from traditional hand-drawn animation after the underwhelming box office performance of The Princess and the Frog, and Musker and Clements wanted to make Mort as a 2D animated feature. When the deal fell apart, Musker and Clements pitched 3 new ideas to the studio. One of them became Moana, which grossed over $690 million worldwide. Number 4. The Shadow King, 2012. The Shadow King, sometimes called the Shade Maker, was set to be Pixar's first ever stop-motion feature. After Pixar screened Coraline internally in 2009 and loved what they saw, They offered Selick a deal to bring that same handcrafted darkness into their universe. The story followed Hap, a 9-year-old orphan in New York, hiding unusually long fingers from a cruel world, who discovers he can use those fingers to cast living shadow puppets and battle a sinister enemy. A voice cast began assembling, including Brendan Gleeson, Jeffrey Tambor, Pamela Adlon, and Catherine O'Hara. Test footage that has since leaked shows genuinely unsettling, beautifully crafted sequences, with a bald villain modeled visually on a Marvel-style crime boss whose shadow seems to live a life of its own. But the budget Selick was promised was low and kept climbing. In fact, Selick has openly blamed John Lasseter for trying to Disneyfy the project until costs spiraled out of control. At the end, Disney pulled the plug in 2012 after pouring in tens of millions with nothing releasable to show for it. Number 3. Don Quixote, 2000. Don Quixote is the best-selling novel in the history of the Spanish language and one of the most influential works of fiction ever written. Since its publication in 1605, it has been translated into more languages than any other book except the Bible. It has inspired countless adaptations across theater, opera, ballet, television, and film. But here is the remarkable part. No major Hollywood studio has ever produced a definitive animated version of it. In fact, Disney alone attempted to make Don Quixote at least 4 separate times across 6 decades. Even John Musker and Ron Clements briefly considered adapting it in the 1990s before choosing to make Hercules instead. But the most heartbreaking attempt came in the early 2000s when Disney assigned the project to Paul and Gaetan Brizzi. Behind the scenes, the Brizzis labored for 2 years on Don Quixote, producing enormous conceptual storyboards, some measuring 3 feet by 4 feet, done entirely in pencil. The artwork was so stunning that even the most seasoned animators at the studio were left speechless. But the Brizzis took Cervantes seriously. Their version was adult in tone, complex in structure, and darkly comic in a way that honored the source material. When the animation head Thomas Schumacher looked them in the eyes, he delivered a verdict that could have come straight from the pages of the novel itself. The project was later canceled in September 2000 because Disney executives felt the Brizzis' adaptation was too dark and too sophisticated for a mainstream animated release. Number 2. Kingdom of the Sun, 2000. In 1994, Roger Allers was handpicked by Disney to lead the studio's next epic. The concept was ambitious. Disney brought in Sting, the global music superstar, to write and perform the full musical score. Owen Wilson was cast as the llama herder. David Spade voiced the Emperor. Eartha Kitt was Yzma. The film was called Kingdom of the Sun, and it had a $100 million budget, but almost immediately the production was in trouble. The story was too sprawling. Producer Randy Fulmer later recalled that it took Roger Allers an hour just to pitch the movie. On one flight from New York, Fulmer started explaining the plot to the person sitting next to him and was still talking when the plane landed in Los Angeles. Some executives felt that Sting's songs were too experimental. Meanwhile, co-director Mark Dindal had been developing a completely different comedic tone on the side, a slapstick, irreverent buddy comedy that had nothing to do with Incan mythology or epic grandeur. When Dindal and storyboard artist Chris Williams pitched their comedic version to studio heads Thomas Schumacher and Peter Schneider, both men were reportedly almost literally on the floor laughing. Roger Allers saw the writing on the wall and left the project. Till today, Disney has never officially released the documentary. Nearly all of Sting's songs were scrapped. Number 1. Gigantic, 2017. Of all the incredible Disney cartoons that never got made, Gigantic stands alone as the most publicly promoted, the most heavily staffed, and the most bewildering cancellation in modern Walt Disney Animation Studios history. The project began in 2013 under the working title Giants and was picked up by Nathan Greno. And here's the thing, by 2015, the project had been officially renamed Gigantic and was unveiled to the world at D23, Disney's massive biennial fan expo. The premise was a reimagining of Jack and the Beanstalk set in Spain during the Age of Exploration. The antagonists were storm giants, towering at 120 feet. It was huge in every sense, and the talent attached to it was staggering. Robert Lopez and Kristen Anderson Lopez were writing original songs for the film. They performed the song Little Man live on stage at D23. John Lasseter was executive producing. But here's the thing. Disney initially set the release date for November 2018. Then it was pushed to November 2020. Then, on October 10, 2017, Walt Disney and Pixar Animation Studios president Ed Catmull issued a statement that read, "It's impossible to know when we begin a project how the creative process will unfold. And sometimes, no matter how much we love an idea or how much heart goes into it, we find that it just isn't working." Gigantic was dead. No further explanation was given. If you found this video fascinating, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button so you do not miss what is coming next. Because trust me, the stories only get wilder from here.